There's been plenty of news and discussion regarding who the Sixers will target to use their cap space and bring in this third star to pair with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. However, there has not been enough discussion about Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey specifically and their contract future, which the Sixers do have some decisions to make this summer. I want to dive into the looming extensions for each of these players, talk about the outlook for these Sixers, as well as break down a little bit of salary cap misinformation I do believe is out there, particularly how it pertains to the cap hold and why the Sixers have delayed this extension with Tyrese Maxey to this point. But I want to lead with the more controversial one here, which I do believe is Joel Embiid. We got this news from Keith Pompey saying that the 76ers could sign Joel Embiid to a 3-year, $193 million extension this summer, per Keith Pompey there. That is a large number for a guy who has earned it more so than just about anyone in the league. And to dive into Joel Embiid specifically, he's still got it. That this season overall, in limited games, of course, he averaged 34.7 points per game, 11.0 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 1.7 blocks, 1.2 steals. By the way, those assists were a career high for Joel Embiid. Shot 52.9% from the field, really impressive number there, and 38.8% from three overall. He also shoots 57.1% on corner threes. We saw a little bit of growth in volume in that area this year, a couple plays designed for him. Just 16.3% of his shots occurring from beyond the three-point arc, but 83.3% of those occurring off an assist there. We know who Joel Embiid is at this point in time, that he's one of the top 5 players in the NBA. He's a guy that was true two-way command, and somebody's going to pay him that type of money if the Sixers are not, but I do expect the Sixers to ultimately step up to the plate. Now, when looking at his current contract, there's still plenty on the books that he's due for $51 million this year, $55 million next year, and then a $59 million player option in 26-27. So we're talking about beyond that, and that's where the risk factor comes in. So let's say in this situation that Embiid elects to pick up that $59 million player option in 26-27. He is 32 years old for that season, and we're talking about 3 years beyond that. So that's taking Joel Embiid into his age 35 season, which I think that's a pretty optimistic outlook for his career lasting, to be perfectly honest. That this is a guy I don't expect to play into his 40s or have a LeBron James-like career which he's extending. He's battled injuries for the duration, and frankly, the fact that he has played as much basketball as he has, I still take as mostly a positive. I understand it has not been exactly ideal, that he certainly missed a great amount of games and not been himself come the playoff times, but he has had moments where he's absolutely shined, and I do think that's the larger story here. So the conversation really becomes, are you hamstringing yourself that much where you're kind of preventing yourself from making moves in the future, or do you die with the superstar that you've lived with to this point? And I think that is ultimately the route the Sixers will choose to take. Frankly, I do think there's a world where if everything goes south, you can find a way to ship Joel Embiid off in some sort of rebuilding package, which is something that does appeal to me. So that's kind of the last resort. In an ideal world, they're continuing to contribute and compete for a championship at this point in time. And that's why that third star conversation comes important. Because if you have Joel Embiid playing a little bit more of a lower usage role at the twilight of his career, Tyrese Maxey continuing to ascend to the forefront, and another guy to pair with him, that still has the ingredients of a contender there. So that's why I do believe that everything points to the Sixers getting that job done. Now, Tyrese Maxey here is the more delicate conversation, largely because this dates back to last offseason. That Tyrese Maxey was extension eligible then. The Sixers and Tyrese chose not to come to an agreement, and there is a salary cap reason for that. And Maxey, to his credit, stepped up, had a career year, and to dive into specifically what he did on the court this season, 25.9 points per game, 6.2 assists, a career high at that number, 3.7 rebounds, 1.0 steal per game, just 1.7 turnovers per game, which is really impressive, really great assist to turnover ratio there. Shot 47% or 45% from the field and 37.3% from beyond the three-point arc. That being a bit of a step back, but a lot of that due to the shots that he had to take without Joel Embiid there and kind of having to create his offense a little more than was the case with James Harden next to him in past season. He shoots 61% on corner threes, which is a ridiculously efficient number there. 59.9% of threes coming off the assist and 40.1 of his shots in general coming from beyond the three-point arc there. Tyrese Maxey has answered every single question that has ever been asked about him since coming to the Sixers. That there was a wide range of opinions when that draft selection was made, and he has exceeded even the greatest of expectations there. Now, the Maxey extension, he has earned himself to get paid for it. That we have this report here saying the Sixers are expected to re-sign Tyrese Maxey to a 5-year, $205 million deal. This, again, coming from Keith Pompey there. It gets the word max contract gets thrown around often in NBA circles. And I do want to break down that all max contracts are not created equal. And for Tyrese Maxey, that he did bump up his number a little bit this season by getting that All-Star nod, but he also missed out on the All-NBA selections, which did cost him a great deal of money. To dive into exactly the difference and what those would have been, shout out to Sixers Adam for breaking this down here, saying Tyrese Maxey did not make All-NBA, which means his 5-year max contract this summer will be $204.4 million. If he made All-NBA, it would have been $245.3 million. So on the left is the maximum offer that he will see in front of him. On the right is what it would be if it was All-NBA. So you can see how those numbers change. That for next season, he'll be making $35.25 mil versus it would have been $42.3 mil. 38 mil versus 45 mil, and you can see the way that it goes up on both sides. The bigger question I think it will be for what is this contract is if the final season will be a player option or not. I'm more of under the impression that this is both sides negotiating in good faith, both seeing things clearly, but I do think the Sixers will reward Tyrese Maxey by showing the faith in the organization that he did have by giving him that player option just in case at the tail end of it. That would not surprise me in the slightest, and frankly, he's earned that. In general, this isn't a situation where I'm worried about things going south. I'm very optimistic that Tyrese Maxey is exactly who he always has been. He will continue to keep his foot on the gas. This is not a Ben Simmons situation where you're chasing that contract and things go south. We can tell how Tyrese Maxey is wired to this point. Now, from the salary cap conversation as a whole, I don't expect Tyrese Maxey's deal to ultimately be announced until the rest of the roster is put in place. And why that is, let's start by looking at the active roster as a whole. That currently is Joel Embiid on the books for $51.4 million. Paul Reed has a $7.7 million non-guaranteed contract, so the Sixers could just waive that to get it off the books. Jeff Doughton, $2.1 million on the club option, so not guaranteed there. And Ricky Council, also non-guaranteed, $1.89 million there. The reality is Joel Embiid in a blank canvas is the Sixers roster right now. And the reason that I say that Tyrese Maxey will be delayed is because of the cap holds that come with it. And to dive into what the current cap holds are on the Sixers team, you can see each of these players. For example, Tobias Harris with a $45 million cap hold. Yeah, I don't think the Sixers are going to pick that one up. Buddy Hield, $28 million cap hold. Think that's a little steep. They will not. Batum, $17 million. Nope. But the guy that is notable is Tyrese Maxey at a $13 million cap hit there. And what those cap holds mean is essentially you're keeping the bird rights for a player. So for the Sixers specifically, they have all these contracts coming off the books. The big theory and the big driving force for why they attempted to do that and why they were successful in it is to create this optionality and all this flexibility for this summer. With Tyrese Maxey specifically, by keeping that cap hold on the books, they are using that $13 million number when projecting all this salary cap space. So we just pointed out the contract and what it will be, which is, of course, $35.2 million there. That is what Tyrese Maxey is going to actually be seeing, but by opting into that cap hold, keeping that $13 million on the books, which, of course, Tyrese Maxey has outplayed that projected number there, the Sixers can operate with that as the cap number using him and then go back and re-sign Maxey at the end. You always can go above the salary cap to retain your own players when you're using bird rights. Now, in these other situations, say that they do get the cap hold off the books. I'll use Tobias Harris as the clear example here for $45 million. That's obviously not what he's going to command in the open market or what the Sixers would be remotely willing to bring him back on. So you get that number off the books. You can still re-sign Tobias Harris, but you do not control his bird rights to that point. So you have to bring him back into cap space, not in a situation like this with Maxey when you go over it. So for this same example, once again, Tyrese Maxey, you opt into that cap hold for $13 million. You're using that number. You then hand this $50 million deal to Paul George, which soaks up the rest of the salary cap there. Even when that occurs, you can still hand Tyrese Maxey this max contract because of the bird rights you hold with him. So that is the very simplified version of it. I will give a shout out to Yassi Goslin, formerly of Hoops Hype, who's just launched a YouTube channel, is doing some nice work on the salary cap deep dives there. Definitely recommend checking that video if you want to go a little more in depth here. But this is the point where it has been established with the Sixers team. The pillars of the franchise are Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Those guys are going to be rewarded and paid as such this summer. If not with Embiid this summer, it is coming soon. That I do believe with Joel specifically, he's a guy who is a smart just individual as well, that he's going to want that long-term security. I do believe. I do expect him to be pushing for that. And for Maxey specifically, he has earned that. Let's not let it go under the radar how much it was a show of good faith from Maxey himself for being willing to push off this extension. And to his credit, he earned every penny of this, that he produced a career year with there being a little bit of just things up in the air for how this season can go. Think about a different world where things don't go as well for Tyrese this season, where maybe he picks up a nagging injury, or maybe he just doesn't shoot the ball well or doesn't take those strides forward that everyone was hoping. We're having a more difficult conversation right now. So Maxey made the discussion easy by playing up to the player that they hoped he could be, and I do believe it is only the start for both these guys as a duo. So shout out to the Sixers for putting themselves in this spot, but now they have to maximize themselves. That if this is not successful with bringing in that third star or completing a true championship roster around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, it's all for nothing. So make sure you pay the guys, make sure you take care of them for the moment, but there's still a lot of work to do on this roster. So once again, I do expect that extension to ultimately land for Joel Embiid. I do expect Tyrese Maxey to absolutely get every penny of that max contract, but don't be in a panic if that is not happening in the early moments of this offseason, because when you're looking at the order of operations of how they're going to build this roster, it does make sense for the Sixers to wait until the end. So appreciate you guys for tuning in this video. Now, do you have any hesitancy on either of those contract deals? I do want to hear from you guys in the comments. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button right here on Sixers Digest to keep the family growing. Appreciate each and every one of you who tuned into our first live stream with me and Cliff last night. Did a nice breakdown of each of the Sixers targets, kind of ranking what our order would be. We're going to be back with much more of those throughout the offseason as the dominoes begin to fall and turn for what the offseason is going to look like. So make sure you're keeping it locked, hitting that subscribe button to stay posted and in the loop for all of it, dropping a like to let us know you're listening, and appreciate each and every one of you once again. Peace.